This is page 25, and on this page we're going to apply those percent skills that we have learned. Out of 3,500 students at a school, only 36% passed. Goodness, that is not a good pass rate, is it? How many students failed? Well, if 36% passed, and we know that 100% would be all the students. Let's draw a line here. We want to know the percent that did not pass, which is a synonym for failed. So 100 minus 36 is 64%. And we're interested in this case in the students who failed out of the total students. So we can go ahead and carry our 3,500. That's all the students, so that's a total. So we would be multiplying 3,500 times 64. And that's a very big number. That's okay, because when we divide it by 100, you can just knock those zeros off. That leaves us with 2,240 students who failed. If you prefer to use the triangle method or any other method, that is fine. Whatever works for you is fine. Okay, this one, I'm assuming that we're talking about someone who owns a restaurant. It's kind of an odd problem. Your food cost is $5,500. Your total food sales are $11,000. What percent of your food sales do the food costs represent? So I'm going to set up a proportion of costs to sales. $5,500 would be the costs. The sales are $11,000. We know that our 100% is built in. So here comes the multiplying. You really don't even need a calculator. You do 55 times 1 with 4 zeros divided by 11,000. Knock off the zeros that you can, and you end up with 550 divided by 11. That is 50%. So your costs are exactly half of your sales. You have a large container of olive oil. So you know what I'm going to do. It's going to have to be a square container or a rectangular container. You have used 25 quarts of oil. 25% of the olive oil remains. So we still have a quarter, 25% of the oil that was in here to begin with. Okay. That means that 75% of the oil has been used. And it tells us that we have used 25 quarts. Now, another thing that you want to be really careful with right here, it's not something you may even think about, but you need to check it. You want to be sure that those units match, that you don't have gallons or cups or pints, that you're dealing with quarts to quarts. And we are, but just double check that. So the question is, how many quarts remain? That green section represents how many quarts. Well, in order to find that, we're going to first have to figure out how many quarts the whole thing will hold. So in order to do that, I have to use the info that I know, which is this information. So I'm going to set up my proportion using that information. I encourage you strongly to use words. This is quarts used out of total quarts. So you've used 75% of your 100%, and that 75% is 25 quarts. So 100 times 25, that's 2,500, divided by 75. And you can use the calculator. This one doesn't cancel zeros like the others. 33.3333. That's 33 1/3 quarts in that whole container. So this number right there, sorry, that didn't work like it was supposed to. This whole container is 33 1/3 quarts. Well, if you use 25 of them, the word remain is a clue that subtraction has to happen. Don't panic about this fraction. It's not going to be that bad because that 1/3 can just come down. And then 13 minus 5 is 8. So you have 8 1/3 quarts remaining. And one more. Bob just hired a new employee to work in your bake shop. In 1 hour, the employee burned 55 chocolate chip cookies. If this represented 15% of the day's production, how many cookies did you plan on producing that day? So we do have a distractor. This is bad. In 1 hour, they burned up 55 cookies, or 15% of your production. I don't know how that employee is going to work out. The 1 hour is a distractor. It will not factor into this problem. We are looking at the number of cookies burned out of the total for the day. Well, we know that he burned 55 cookies. We know that that was 15% of what we wanted to make that day. So 100% would be the total, and our proportion will work this way. 55 times 100, that's 5,500, divided by 15. I'm not going to attempt this by in my head. It's been a long day. I'm not going to risk it. That's 366.6 repeating. That is about 367 cookies. Goodness. That sounds like I could be working there. Okay, that brings us to the end of this page. I'm going to stop this video so that it's not so terribly long, but in the next one we'll look at page 26.